Alright, this week's class is about lettering. Lettering is often overlooked in terms of the importance when artists are embarking on a career in comics. The truth is that lettering is as important as the pictures themselves because it is a partnership. Now, if you look at this example, this is a Joe Simon, Jack Kirby page from Captain America in the Golden Age. Uh, you see a few things that differentiate this from comics of today. One being there are a lot of panels here. Two, the characters are often breaking the panel. But three, the lettering kind of doesn't fit, kind of squeezed in there, almost an afterthought. And while today this might be considered dated and somewhat bad, we can't criticize because they were just learning the ropes back then. But you don't want to make these same mistakes. So when you see lettering like this that just doesn't fit in the space, there's no room for it. Lettering like this, it's kind of an afterthought, it's kind of tucked out of the way. You want the lettering to be equal to the artwork because that is going to make your work stronger. See something like this, beautifully drawn page. Again, the lettering just is sort of just squeezed in there. They put the emphasis on the artwork, and well, we'll just squeeze the words in here. And what you're virtually guaranteeing with lettering in this style is that your readers are not going to read all the words. They're going to skip over because it's just too much. It's almost overwhelming. But when you really look at all the dead space in this one. Look at the dead space in this panel. There's room for the lettering to have existed in a better place. But again, this goes back, some 60, 70 years. They're just figuring out how to make this new art form work. We see a case of this. This would be a piece of work from the UK, circa 1987, I think. And you can see the lettering is much stronger. The lettering is actually considered as the page is drawn. It's a much more professional bit of lettering. There are different balloon styles. The fact that we have square balloons, that indicates narration. These more rounded balloons, all dialogue. There's a lot of good placement. The artist left a lot of dead areas in his panels so you could fit these lettering balloons in there without having them both be obtrusive and blocking important elements, but they give it a more balanced feel. Mixing the style of balloon, so we have these balloons here that have the kind of squiggly line, that is to indicate that the character speaks in a different kind of voice than the norm. So it's little tricks, but if you look at this, the lettering seems to coexist on the page throughout panel to panel with the artwork, and that's the goal that we want to shoot for. So as we talk about lettering in a rectangular balloon works for narration. However, it looks awkward if you use it in a regular speech balloon. It almost looks like, well, I had this space here and I needed to fit some lettering in there and I totally forgot to put it in there. It's better to do this, having the word balloons rounded and the lettering in a more square format where it starts narrow and it thickens up and then it narrows out again. That's a lot more natural and it's easier for your reader to read. The space around the balloon is equally important. That gives the balloon the words room to breathe in sort of a subliminal way. So this is a much stronger balloon than the more narrow balloon. You want to make sure that your choice of dialogue includes punch. In this case, stack is bolder than the rest of the words here. It's a poor lettering choice in this example. This is a lettering choice built on my handwriting. But if you look at the two, go back to the original one, the word stack is regular. Here the word stack is emboldened. When we bold a word in our dialogue, we give it punch. We make the character deliver that dialogue with a bit of emphasis on that word. So in this case, it would be it's better to stack your word balloons as opposed to it's better to stack your word balloons. If a character has a lot to say, break it up into two balloons. This is called the addendum balloon, and all that means is that there's a pause between the sentences and it breaks it up. Your reader is more likely to read multiple balloons that are broken up, and it also is a more natural way of speaking. If a character talks slowly, with long pauses, you can demonstrate that by using a few more balloons. Just make sure that they point to the same place and are not connected. So that indicates hesitance. If you think of an actor like William Shatner, the way he delivers dialogue, that would be pauses. So by having a break, you're actually having your characters act. So when you break the balloons up, it causes pause in the reader's mind, gives that character a distinctive speaking method. So that's effective. Looking at lettering. First one is a very bad font choice. That is the dreaded Comic Sans. In comics, we tend to use all capitals. It's just traditional. It's just the way it's all been. You don't have to go that route. And I know plenty of artists who have said they want to do something completely different, and they put their own lettering in and they try something completely different that's very artistic, but it makes it difficult to read, and the book sadly suffers and doesn't sell. Remember, this is a commercial enterprise. You're trying to sell it, so in some things I would argue don't try and reinvent the wheel. Use what always worked. Another couple of examples of ways to make your characters speak to your reader. A shout, the words break the balloon. A whisper, the words are smaller inside the balloon. If you look at this is a simple layout of character A and B. Speaking order, always left to right. However, what happens if character B needs to speak first? So in panel 1, we have character A, character B, character A speaks first, character B replies. In panel 2, we need character B to speak first. So the way we handle that is we raise their balloon to the top of the panel, and we put the response balloon from character A into the bottom of the panel. So we overlay that way to control that character B, who's on the wrong side, is now speaking first. So that's a critical bit of controlling the flow of the dialogue. Here's an example of a nice back and forth. Character A speaks first, character B responds, character A says something else, character B responds to that. You can handle it this way or you can handle it this way. Personally, I think this is more aesthetically pleasing, but it's a personal choice. This works as well. You know, I'm Jim, I'm Bob, nice to meet you. Yeah, sure is. You can do the same thing here. So really it's personal choice the way you want to go, and that's something that every artist has to make a choice with. Using certain fonts to convey sound and stay within the tone of the strip. Here's an example by Will Eisner. He often used words and lettering in a way that really carried through the story. This is a great example of the way this character would be speaking. It gives you the sense that there is a kind of a ghostly, horrific tone to this story. It works great. So he was a big believer in the words being as important as the pictures. In fact, he did it quite well in his comic strip The Spirit, which ran from about 1940 to about 1954. Eisner didn't work on the strip during World War II. He was drafted into service, but he came back to it after World War II. And the era of Eisner's strips, post-World War II, really verge into brilliance. He does more in an 8-page story than most people can do in a 200-page epic. You can see in this example, he starts the story with a postcard. You see the characters in the top of the panel receiving a postcard, reading the postcard, and then he reveals to the reader what that postcard says. He also works the title in. Again, very illustrative. The words here equally important to the artwork. Nice effect. Another example here, sound effect lettering, always in a different font than what you write. And the way he handles this particular sequence, the narration floats, as does the character who has died and is going up to heaven. Really well done. And again, in terms of the balance, Eisner easily could have put the narration in each of these boxes, but he chooses instead to let the pictures tell the story in these first two panels, and then he gives a nice closing bit of narrative to the end of the story. I think that's nicely done. And again, having the words as important as the pictures, so important. Nice example of Frank Miller's work doing his own lettering. And in terms of the lettering, it's actually a little bit weak. The balloons are pretty tight, close to the words, so they get a little bit hard to read. He's also got a lot of words bold. When you do that, what happens is you put a lot of emphasis on the speech pattern, and it makes it a little bit tiring to read. But again, stylistic choice, and as an artist, you get to decide if that's what you want to do. Wrapping it up, here's a fantastic example by Dave Mazzucchelli in City of Glass. That's the name of this particular project. Ton of balloons here, absolute ton. He also uses two different distinctive shapes for the balloons for the characters speak, and he also differentiates each character with his own font. Now, the fonts are similar, but they're not identical. So when you look at these, you differentiate who's speaking, but by having so many panels, he is able to control how the reader reads this page. If you eliminated these panel borders here, you would have all these balloons in one single panel. It would still work, it would still be a narrative that flows, but this is better. The panels are used to break up the excessive amount of dialogue and control how the reader gets the words. So, and it's also equally balanced. So we've got panel compositions that are designed with the lettering in mind. We have good placement, we have good flow. Characters, as we've talked about in previous weeks, they stay pretty much in their same designated position throughout the story. In this two-page sequence, the only change we have here, these two characters, the camera slides down behind them from this first panel. I think the patterns on the jacket, very important to differentiate the characters. Pattern on the notebook. You may not even notice that the notebook plays an important part in this panel here, and you look back as a reader to see where that notebook first appears, and you notice it there. All right, so that's lettering. We're going to get into digital and traditional lettering and how we do it after the break. So come on back and